3, 2, 1.
Oh yeah! Another episode of the Johnny Jigs podcast, tapping bottom.
Tapping bottom with Johnny Jigs.
Man, this one goes out to all my boys out there that are pulling wire, hanging drywall, you know what I mean? Sweating pipes, pouring concrete, or even sitting at a desk reading emails, just waiting for their next fishing trip. Let us be a part of your day. That way you can at least be a part of fishing when you're not fishing.
Live vicariously through us.
So I am Captain Johnny Sedum. Joining me today is my co-host Christopher Doyle and Adam Eury. And we have a special guest today, a Marine Corps veteran and one of the coolest content creators that are fishing related, Mr. Ryan Morie. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome to Tapping Bottom with Johnny Jigs podcast. So I roll into, I'm thinking of these guys out there pulling wire and pouring concrete and, just really sweating out there, just dreaming about their next long range trip. And it's reminiscent of, my days doing that. And I always think about, the build up into a long range trip, and you're out there and you can't wait. We're so blessed that we've made our way somehow, some way into an industry where we get to fish quite often, so not that it's not as exciting, but these long range trips, something cool is going to happen. You're spending days on the water, and the possibility of you catching your personal best, if not a world record, is there whenever you're fishing that many days straight. So figured we'd start off a show and talk about long-range fishing and our experience doing it from the Gulf of America to the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean. I think we've all kind of dug into that all the way around. The excitement and then the gear and then the money you spend and depending on where you're going. So for instance, like let's say the Yankee Cap going out of Stock Island, Key West, you could drop a couple grand pretty quick on some gear. So understanding where you're going, definitely a good starting point for that. And then whether you want a slow pitch jig or you want to bait fish or you want to throw some stick baits and poppers, it all really boils down to what are you planning on doing, because you can't do it all
and be prepared for the troll.
right.
Am I the only guy that goes to bed the night before a trip fully geared up in fishing boots, clothes, with my rod in my bed?
Yes.
Okay. Fair. Just making sure. Just checking.
Ryan, so you were recently on a Texas trip.
Yeah, so I went out of Port Aransas. That was an awesome trip. I mean, it was reminiscent of, any other like long range headboat trip, but it was cool to see all those guys. You don't think about Texas and think about fishing, but it was very much like fishing out of Louisiana, fishing out of Alabama, headed to the rigs. We fished the flower gardens. We did some deep stuff. So that trip was epic. I would highly recommend that operation. Felt a little bit more like camping if you compare that to going on like the American Patriot, where all your meals are covered. The bunks are quiet and down below. On this boat out of Port Aransas, the bunks are in the main area. So if you're sleeping, everyone else is loud. You make all your own food. So it's all on you, what you make, what you eat. And if you don't eat,
Air conditioning?
Yeah, the air conditioning worked all right. And you go in the wintertime typically too, because you're going out to those rigs. What most people are fired up about are going to try and tuna fish at night. So it's something that I've done personally on like a lot of center consoles and stuff too. So I was stoked to do it with the whole headboat, because when you have 20 guys doing it, who knows what's going to happen.
So you guys are going for yellowfin.
Yellowfin, black fins, whatever else is going to be around. But obviously you do a bunch of other stuff during the day too. So you do slow pitching. I caught my first barrel fish on slow pitch that morning.
Oh, you got the barrel.
Yeah. We caught a bunch. We caught like, I think the boat caught like 7 or 8 or something like that. And like 6 of them came on the jig, like just back-to-back drifts. It was sick.
That makes me feel good, because
yeah.
I've been on a mission and I can't get one of those things to save my life.
If it makes you feel better, I don't think I ate any of mine. I think I ended up leaving it in Texas because I shipped back a cooler full of fish. And I was like, wait, where's my barrel? I was like, this is freaking tile fish. This isn't barrel fish. And I was like, so I didn't get to eat any of it.
I still haven't tried barrel fish.
Yeah.
So like eating wise though, on a long range trip, so how many days are you on that boat?
That was like the same tempo as like a Pulley Ridge trip in terms of time. I think it was 60 something hours. And
Did they call it like a 3-day trip or a 4-day trip?
I think they just call it 60 hour. I mean,
60. I like
can't
that.
remember.
I like that. I bring that up because a 4-day trip out of San Diego is different than a 4-day trip out of Florida.
It's legit.
San Diego's legit 4 days,
Okay.
whereas Florida it's a 10
2
to
your
12
days are
hours
just running.
Correct.
Yeah.
You know, so you're really fishing 36 hours on a 4-day trip.
I will say that Texas trip, we ran a lot more than I expected. Like, it was like, okay, we're changing spots. Go take a nap because we got 4 hours. And you're like, well, what do you mean 4? We spent 12 getting out here. What do you mean 4 hours to the next spot? But it was good, and it was a nice variety of things. The bite wasn't that hot in general. Like, I don't think anyone caught anything crazy. The biggest yellowfin was like 80 pounds, and a lot of the time they catch 180s. So, you know, it wasn't, we had a really good wahoo bite. We were just trolling over the flower gardens, and I think we caught, like, the boat landed, 8 or 9 wahoo up to 70 pounds.
Wow.
And I probably caught the smallest one, which was like 18 or 19, but it still made a good thumbnail for YouTube. Out of 25 guys, if only 8 landed, I was happy to at least get one. And so
Not on the jig?
Not on a jig that time. That was just on the troll. When I walked up top, because my number wasn't going to get called anytime soon, while we were trolling around the flower gardens, I looked at the captain's screen through the window, lit up. I'm like, bro, why don't we just stop and jig these fish? There's so many, because every time we would go over them, 4 rods would go down, and pulled hooks, fish get sharked, things happen, guys aren't winding fast enough, just it happens. But it was a cool trip. It was definitely
Ryan,
a cool
when
trip.
you said number, were you referring to trolling? Like they give everybody a number for the troll when you're trolling?
Yeah, so it doesn't matter whether you brought gear or not. It's every bunk gets a number, or every bunk has a number. So as you get a bite, bunk number 1 gets bite number 1. Bunk number 2 gets bite number 2. And it just goes through the whole bunk order. And I was reeling on, personally owned gear that like the guy just put out there. And we were on a private trip, so I don't know if that's how they do it when it's like an open trip for everyone else. But for us, like that's how we ran the rules. And I think that's how they typically do it, but I could be wrong on that. But it was cool because, on a Yankee trip or on a American Patriot trip in the past, like I don't bring Wahoo gear. So it's like, oh, well, that part of fishing I'm just out on. Like I'm just hanging out. Might as well just not even be out there. But now it's like, oh, 18's coming up. 18's coming up. And, what happened to me too is it's like, all right, 18's coming up. And then boom, we get a double header. So 17 goes and then I go and I hop on a rod and it's screaming. And then 17 runs over to me and he's like, hey, my fish came off. They told me to come over here. I'm like, okay, okay,
No.
Guess how big that fish was. 70 pounds. Luckily, I got to catch another one.
You had to hop off.
I hopped off.
You were instructed to hop off.
Yeah.
Who puts the gear out? The mates put the gear out?
The mates, or like sometimes there was a couple guys that were just doing it too. Like it was there was a lot of camaraderie on that trip. Like everyone was kind of like all on level playing field. But yeah, the kid also, just to add insult to injury. Like, very nice guy. I can't even remember his name, but I got sent a picture of him yesterday, and he was on another long-range trip with them, and he just caught, like, an 80-pound Warsaw. And I was like, that is the luckiest mofo.
Wow. Get his name so we don't invite him fishing. All the trolling's done, right? And it's time to, like, drop jigs for tunas or whatever the case may be. Do the mates reel everything in, or...?
Yeah, I mean, it was a combo of mates, and just, I mean, if I was there and was like, hey, reel up, like, I'm gonna reel up too.
I think I can get behind
there was a couple other guys, like, there was one guy, and I was like, dude, you're doing more stuff than the mates are. Like, he was gaffing everyone's fish and everything, but you could just tell he was just that guy that just wanted to get things done, so.
But what if it was your rod, your reel, your rigged trolling lure out, and all of a sudden they tell you you gotta hop off this fish because the other guy lost it?
No.
Yeah,
dude.
and typically, like, if you lost your fish, it was like you just lost your fish. But I don't know, the mate was just like, oh, this one's not on anymore, just go over there. You know what I mean? So it was kind of like he didn't actually get a chance. But there's always a gray area with any stuff like that. I'm not, who cares, man? It's whatever. It's
Exactly. You
fishing.
got to be cool.
I was stoked that we got that
yeah.
big fish in the boat. That was it.
And I guarantee if you had asked that kid for a chunk of wahoo, probably would have given it to
For
you.
sure.
Yeah, that's just the kind of camaraderie that you get on head boat fishing.
That's something to be said about headboat long range fishing because they all have their different characteristics.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you've never fished this boat before, you don't know what to expect.
Yeah, like the Yankee, at one point in time, they did serve food, but not anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So this trip that you were on out of Texas, no food on that boat. Generally microwaves, right, or something you could
So
use.
yeah, microwave. There's a propane grill in the back. So
Oh,
like we were
perfect.
grilling deer backstrap, ribeyes. Like I mean, I didn't have a vegetable for 3 days, but like
Yeah.
we were eating decent. There's like a little griddle, so you can make eggs and bacon in the morning if you wanted to. Coffee pot, microwave. So like you could do well. You know, I flew into Texas, so my buddy covered all the food and stuff like that. And I was like, all right, I
sweet.
hope I'm gonna eat something. And
Heck yeah.
yeah, we ate a bunch of meat like men, so
Yeah,
that was fun.
Oh, dude, vegetables are for rabbits. So and then there's the other side of that, to where like when we go on the Polaris Supreme out of California on our tuna trips, and I'm talking about like these dudes are like, they're like not just putting a meal together, but they're plating it perfect, adding little designs to the plates and stuff. I mean, it's pretty top notch. And then the sleeping arrangements. So you just went from
A Marine barrack.
Marine barrack, right? You're used to that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Marine Corps, right?
I mean, honestly, man, you get the eye mask, you put the earplugs in, and I can sleep through anything. I put a towel to block everything else. And just, if you're tired, man, you're going to sleep.
And then there's the downstairs, bunk arrangement where it's like generally pretty darn cold, which is nice. You could deal with that, but everybody's, everybody who farts and sneezes at the same time, you're gonna hear that. Actually, I gotta tell you guys something. So I just got back from a long range trip on the American Patriot, and it was like, by the last day when you're on the ride in, that's when you're smoked, right? Because you've been going hard, you're done fishing, everything's cleaned up, and it's all about sleeping on the ride in. So you sleep hard, you have strange dreams usually, at least I do personally. So I'm laying there in the bunk and I'm having this dream, something about my boat sinking and my kids swimming around the boat, and I'm pissed off because they won't go in the house. And then at full volume, I'm like yelling at my kids, "Get in the house!" And I wake myself up because I said it out loud in this quiet bunk room. And dude, I don't talk in my sleep, never. It's just that delirium of the final stages of a trip. But there's a lot of bunk arrangements, and you always want to bring your own sheets, right? Or actually, what's it, the Polaris Supreme? They have sheets on it. They
Sheet,
have
blanket, pillow.
Sounds like it's worth the money.
dude.
Yeah, and they treat you
Dude,
right,
it's
huh?
They
incredible.
do good over there. It's not just the Polaris too. It's a lot of the fleet follows suit. Yeah, they do a good job over there.
It's capitalism at work right there.
Yeah.
You get
Upper level.
spoiled, and then you look at other boats and you're like, oh, I don't want to deal with this, and I got to check myself because I'm there to fish,
Exactly.
and I'll deal with a marine barrack. I'll deal with feeding myself, and I'll fish just as good. It's like that's not the most important thing.
Yeah, I'll eat peanut butter jelly sandwiches if my rod's tight. I'm
Right.
fine.
Oh, I could do those.
Let me ask you guys this. So I've done 2 trips in San Diego, and they were both like, it was a day trip and then like an overnighter. So it wasn't anything crazy. It was, mainly googs on the boat, but that's all the time I had. Both trips, the mates were probably the most condescending like fishermen I've ever fished with. And it was, dude, you don't have to talk to people like that. Like, I get it. You're around googs a lot, but man, like,
Yes.
people are paying money to be here, and you're talking down to everyone like they're 3 years old. Like, I just saw you rig something. You're not that good. Like, you're not as good as you think you are. You wouldn't be working on this boat if you were that good. Like, sorry, man. Like,
No, it's a cultural thing. And I've experienced it as well on the head boats. It's a cultural thing, but I mean, a lot of them are good, man. A lot of them are good fishermen. But we experienced that. I think on one of our long range trips, the guy was like, "Yeah, listen up, fellas. Take everything that you learned in Florida and just
Throw it in the garbage.
throw it in the garbage." Meanwhile, we limited out a day early. We're like, "Hey, can we have what we learned in Florida back out of the garbage?"
We said that. We said that too. True story.
But I think it's a cultural thing, and let them pound their chest, man, and do whatever they want to do. By the time at the end of the day, you know what I mean? I'm gonna do my thing.
yeah, you wouldn't expect that out of California, though. It's supposed to be like chill surfer bros,
Right,
right? Like,
bro. Yeah.
it's kind of weird.
I
but
feel like
guess-
us Florida boys are way more chill, man.
I don't know. Fishermen in general, it's a weird community because you have so much ego. Like, you have so many guys that think they're the best thing that's ever graced the ocean.
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe you're good in your fishery, but dude, if you put that guy in another fishery, he's gonna look like a goog too. And there's so much to learn. And maybe you just haven't been humbled enough, or maybe I don't know. It annoys me about the fishing industry how much ego is involved in everything.
And remaining teachable, I think, is super important. So when you're on those head boats, like these mates are, you know, even on the ones where they know everything. And sometimes I'm like, okay, I know what you're saying and I've done it and it didn't work for me as well as this, you know? So I've experienced that, but there's always the time where it's like, huh, you know, it kind of makes sense. And I've experienced my own stubbornness, like on the long range trips out of California in particular. So on my slow pitch jigs, I put a hook on the top, I put a hook on the bottom, you know, and that hooks more fish, and it makes sure that I've got a couple hooks in the fish. But I can tell you that when that first hook slips and you've got a giant bluefin foul hooked, it is miserable. And what I also learned was, you know, and I was stubborn. I did both hooks, one on top, one on bottom. You know, I needed to experience this for myself. But what I've realized is that these fish are so big, they're sucking that jig down, one hook on the bottom, good to go.
Yeah.
And so that's how all those guys fish, is one hook on the bottom of the jig, no hooks on the top.
Yeah, no hooks on the top.
Yeah. I mean, they don't all fish like that, but just like
That's kind of the standard.
they've figured it out that it's better to avoid foul hooking a
Yeah,
150 pound
absolutely not.
fish than just get the bites you can with the one or two hooks on the bottom.
Why do they like the bottom vice just one hook on the top?
So also, you know, it's a tuna, so fast moving target. So if you get a dog bone bite and you're setting, you're gonna pull the jig through the mouth and get the bottom hooks to penetrate.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. It would look goofy, like to see that on a Florida boat with just one
does.
hook on the bottom.
Yeah,
I did.
agreed.
Oh, it's awkward for all of
Agreed.
us to rig it up that way.
Agreed.
Just like a diamond
So,
jig.
so last year I caught 3 fish that were like in the 130 to 150 range, and I think the second one was a foul hook, you know. And even Julian in the video, we put it in there. He looks at the camera and he goes, "No fully rigged jigs," you know. And I'm like, I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna put my 2 hooks on the bottom. And I went to do it, and I was like, I can't. And I threw my jig back down with the top and the bottom hook. I'm like, I just can't do it. I can't do it. It looks too funny to me.
Well, you're also fishing the column, right? In that point. So you're not worried about snagging on the bottom. You're not worried about a sticky bottom.
Right.
So that bottom hook dangling there looks weird for us.
Yeah.
Totally different fishing, you know?
That makes sense.
It's kind of stupid fishing at night there. It's like, it's fun. Don't get me wrong, but I'm pretty sure like if you put hooks on a potato, they'd freaking eat it if you can get it to fall fast enough.
True that.
It's anything falling fast. So they had this like lure called an Eddie bomb. It's a freaking lead weight with a treble hook on the bottom, and it's all about how fast this thing falls. And it's like you're in 1,000 feet of water, I think. You know, maybe a little less, but somewhere in there. But you're only fishing, you know, down to 300. So it stops at 200. You didn't hit bottom, you know, and that's it. They go down to 300, reel it back up. Go down to 300, reel it back up. And they were just crushing.
Yeah. Yo-yo.
Yeah. Yo-yo in it. That's it. Yeah.
Long range fishing trips.
You know, so I'm thinking about like our fishery in particular, grouper, snapper, and you know, what is the best methods versus bait versus jigs in our experience. And I can tell you from me personally, like I started out as bait fisherman, right? There wasn't slow pitch jigging when I was a kid. I started doing long range trips when I was about 16 years old with my uncle, and it was all about the bait, and Tortugas was the holy lands, right? I didn't even know what Pulley Ridge was back. Like if you were going to Tortugas, it was like, whoa. And then there's been like this progression of jigs moving into the game, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, this works and people are interested. But what I've noticed is the mixture, whenever we go out on regular trips, the mixture isn't quite there. There's not as many guys jigging as there is bait fishing. And the big question is why, right? Why? If it's productive, if it's producing quality fish, the same amount of fish, and there's a couple of things that come to mind, but I'd like to see what you guys are thinking about. Why isn't there more people jigging at this moment?
Well, I mean, just to be simple, there might be guys that have already just bought all this bait gear. They're already spending all this money to go on the trip, and they're just going to go on the trip and use bait because they're about catching fish. You know, some guys don't care about how they catch the fish as much as the fact that they're just catching something. that's what they know. That's what's worked. And I don't necessarily want to go out and spend thousands of dollars on other gear. So it could be as simple as that. And then also, I mean, as a guy that brings jig and bait stuff, sometimes I just want to break from jigging. I'm like, dude, I'm smoked. I'm on hour 36. Let me just drop a giant chicken rig and oh, look at that. I caught a big old snowy. Like, so sometimes it's just a nice change up. And it is nice, I think, to have guys doing both for sure. Oh shoot. Sorry, Butters. It's nice to have guys doing both, but I think we've all seen where jigs are like absolutely smoking the fish, and it's like, you better have one out there.
Actually, this gives me a good segue into we're going to take a quick break, and I'd like to thank our sponsor of today's show, which is Accurate. Accurate is a company that makes some of the best fishing reels in the world. They're a U.S. brand with their factory in California, and Accurate has chosen to sponsor this show today because they are coming out with the new V2, the Valiant 2. So it is the upgrade to their high-end Valiant line of reels, and wait until you guys get a look at this. Accurate has come out with the new Boss Valiant. It kind of resembles like the old Boss Extreme, but they added an extra feature. Right here, there's a black button. Very simple. Stops you right at strike, and then whenever you get into what I like to call the red zone, you push the button and push it a little bit forward. So pretty cool. Accurate's up to some new tricks and coming out with some new stuff. So we're talking about the difference between bait and jigging and you know which one's more productive. I know you've got some input on this, Chris Doyle, about which one's more productive.
Where do I begin? Well, first of all, we're the nuts that just we only jig, you know. And I think as of late there's been a little bit of playing around with a little bit of bait, but 99% of the time we're just dropping jigs because we love dropping jigs, and that's it. But since our inception, day one, I think we've always advocated for if you want to catch the most fish, have the nicest looking cooler at the end of your trip, you're going to be prepared to do both, right? And when you're on multi-day trips and you're spending, you know, full 24 hours fishing, and you phase from dawn to day to dusk to night, you know, there's going to be trends in the bite, and you can read those, and you can look down the starboard rail and watch bait rods just doubled over while you're up on the pulpit with your jigging rod, right? All of us going, dang.
Yeah, you feel like an a-hole.
Oh,
Talking like, what am I
man,
doing with this
you
stupid
know?
hunk of metal? What's going on, man?
Yeah.
Should I put a squid on this thing?
And we've spent
Don't
hours
tell them your
doing that.
secrets, Johnny.
We've spent hours doing that. But if you can chuck your jigging rod down, you know, and suck in your jigging pride and go drop a bait, you're probably going to go get tight, right? And the same goes true on the opposite side. All of a sudden, those bait guys, they'll be fresh, beautiful presentation baits down on the bottom, and nothing's going on, and every guy with a jig is doubled over.
But there's the fear, right, of missing out, FOMO.
Yeah, no
when
doubt.
you're up there jigging and you see them, and all of a sudden they start hitting on the bait, and you're like, oh man, I want to. But what if I miss it out? What if, you know, that bite for the jig can only be, you know, a little bit of time. You could be grinding all day, the entire trip, and that bite hasn't hit. And as soon as you put that rod down and grab that bait, that's when that jigging bite could go off too. So,
right. But yeah, so you're trying to, what my point is, you know, reading the trends. And if you're able to, you know, go back and forth at dawn, and especially the first couple hours of daylight, I will always, for the rest of my life, have a jig in the water. And same true at dusk as well. But at nighttime, guys, you know, after jigging all day long, you find Chris Doyle going to bed around 10 p.m. And usually like 9 to 10:30, I'm just a passive observer of what's going on to see what's coming over the rail. But I'm just biding my time for like 4 a.m. to get up and drop a jig again. Bait, you know, does on most trips reign supreme throughout the night.
There is a secret I have. Are you guys ready for this?
Are you ready for it to not be a secret anymore?
So at nighttime, whenever the jig bite is slowed down on these head boats, like I'm like, all right, how can I still be a jigging guy, but also fish a little bait at the same time without and shamelessly do it, right? So the Baku balls, right? The tie rubber, right? Which is essentially, for you guys at home, it's a lead ball essentially with assist hooks hanging out the back of it. So and what I learned was you take a piece of squid and you put one hook facing one way, one hook facing the other way. That way the hooks are it's pointing out of the squid at opposite sides. It's the best way to rig it. You drop that thing down. And so these guys are still freaking with their super heavy weights. And I was getting down just on the recent trip, getting down my 200-gram Baku ball with a squid on it. And I was wailing on the fish, dude. Wailing. I was like, you know what? I'm going to catch fish by any means necessary.
I like it.
Can I also bring this up too? So when you're talking jigging, we're talking bait, always got to have a spinner and a trolling setup. You know, we're talking about long range trips. You're talking about a lot of gear. And we speak to Captain Greg, you know, on a friendly level a lot. And he always has a fun way of delivering what he witnesses, you know, anglers showing up on the boat with. And he's beside himself by so many of us that go with just a truckload of gear because we're trying to cover all our bases. But that's part of we opened up the podcast talking about the anticipation of a long range trip. And whether you've been on 100 or you've never been on one, you will go through what's a nice way of saying it? A mind
checklist, massive checklist, a mind conundrum,
a mind conundrum, you know, of am I gonna bring my power 2, 3, 4, 1, trolling, spinning, this gear, jigs, this shape, this size, how many jig bags, you know, sir, it's just like, and you'll think about it every day for weeks, you know, up until the trip. And it'll drive you a little nuts. We get tons of phone calls at the shop, you know, and you know, and we think about this way too much, and that's part of the fun of it. A long range trip will do that to you.
It's easy to overpack.
Yeah, very easy.
Well, there's no tackle shop out there, right? And that's what we tell people when they call and they come in the shop. You know, well, I'm just gonna bring one, and I said, well, when you're out there, one is none. You know, you lose that one and you have nothing.
Yeah, I think with lures, definitely with jigs, you want to bring more than one, but then you have to have the slow pitch rods that cover the depths of the boat. So understanding the trip that you're going on is important. So if you're doing a pulley ridge light, you're probably going to be 400 feet and under, power 3 and under, right? You need a power 3, power 2, then you know, bring all the other stuff that you need for bait fishing and that. But whenever, like if I'm going on a head boat and they're like, well, we're going to start in 100 and end up in 1200, it's like, I need everything. I need
multiples of everything.
Yeah.
But that's half the fun sometimes when you talk about the anticipation. And so if you're a gear nerd like me, it is fun to acquire all of the things. You know, you're nurturing that inner gatherer. You know, we're going out and hunting fish, but we're gathering all the gear, right?
Yeah.
And it's, I have to get this new rod. I have to get these new jigs. And I mean, for me, it's exciting. I mean, when I was 14, I remember just sitting there, just thinking about the next reel that I was saving up for because I was excited. I was like, I only have to mow 6 more lawns and then I can buy this $120 reel. And I'm really stoked. So, I mean, that's part of putting a date on the calendar and signing up for one of these long range trips. It's like, oh, now I have to go get this gear. But now you have it for life, too. So you can go on more long range trips after that. And it's kind of fun. And honestly, sometimes the anticipation is a little bit better than the suck of the long range trips because sometimes you're not catching anything and it does suck and you're like, gosh, all right, well, I just gotta keep grinding it out.
Yeah, it's not always great. That's true.
I was joking about the night before sleeping in my gear, but for me, half the fun is preparing all that gear.
Exactly.
Getting everything laid out. Like I have my boots by the door. I have my favorite lucky underwear, my lucky socks, and everything sitting right there. And then I have my tackle box and I'm laying everything out.
You wear underwear on these trips?
The lucky underwear.
Oh, okay.
He's got a montage going on in his head, too. You know, the Rocky song.
The cutscene.
Yeah. He's lacing up his boots, polishing his gear.
It's more like Commando. Whenever he is like getting ready and putting everything on, that's more like what goes on in my head.
Long range trips are also good for just a full comprehensive gear check because you want to go out there with fresh reels, fresh leaders, you know, fresh tackle. So it does give you an opportunity to kind of upgrade. And I've then lived off of my tackle that I just geared up for on a long range trip for, you know, months and months afterwards. And it's almost like the long range trip is my cause to do a big gear up, and then I eat off that for a while.
It's a great reset.
Yeah.
Right. So there's one thing about long range trips is that you're fishing on a boat with 20 to 30 anglers, even more at certain times, right? So you're bumping into guys constantly, and you have to be mindful of each other and really respect each other on the rail. And like, so there's etiquette that goes along with long range trips. And I know that I have a couple of my own personal pet peeves, and I'm gonna share those with you guys, and then let's get into some of the other etiquette. So the first one for me is like, if we're in a communal bunk area, right, that is away from the galley and stuff like that, like for instance on the Yankee Cap or the Patriot, I think the boat you were in Texas doesn't have a separate area, but that area, right, if you know that your boots are stank, just rank stank, doo-doo nasty, right? Okay. And your socks, leave them upstairs, man. We don't want to smell that, right? Put some fresh socks on. And like, I don't want to feel like I just crawled into your underwear. Like, you know what I mean? Like leave those upstairs. So that's my first pet peeve. And both of them have to do with the bunk area, right? So, okay. So, and then with the separate bunk area, when you go downstairs, okay, it could be 12 o'clock in the afternoon. It doesn't matter. There's always either a mate or some of the other, guys that are on the boat that are choosing that time to rest during the trip and sleep. So if you go down into the bunk room and you're talking full volume and having a conversation with someone, you're being super inconsiderate of the guys down there. That's not the place for having a conversation. Bring it upstairs. So that's my 2 etiquette pet peeves, and I'm sure we can do a round table of this. I'll start with Adam, if you got one.
My biggest pet peeve is when you're on the pulpit and you've lobbed out already, and someone will come over and lob over your line and just lobs over everybody. That drives me nuts. Whenever you have your rotation, right? Because there's numbers for the bait guys. Everybody's stuck on their number on the gunnel. But for the jiggers, we rotate, right? And you're supposed to be, have etiquette with that. And whenever you don't, that drives me nuts. If someone weasels in between you, or lobs over you, You know what I mean?
What about a camper?
A camper?
Yeah,
that just
drop
posts right
jigs and
there.
just camps.
I'm just gonna
doesn't move.
No, you just have to remind them. Most of the guys know it because you tell them and you talk about it. But most, like, we're just humans. We get lazy, and it's like, hey, can you scooch over? Like, you have to be the annoying guy. Like, hey, can you scooch over? I'm gonna try and walk this way. And
Then they remember. Yeah,
I've seen Will, beautiful rotations going, 6, 7, 8 people going, and I've seen him wake up from a nap, wipe the sleep out of his eyes, and grab his rod and reel. I've watched him walk up to the pulpit, turn around backwards, and wing his jig behind him, but out, just over his head, like actually incredible.
Yeah, that's impressive, actually.
Very
Did he
impressive.
Get a bird's nest or anything?
Yeah, no bird, just over his head and then turn around and lock it in. Excuse me,
He's looking for a laugh at that point.
It was good.
And here's the thing with Willie Biggs, who we love dearly. Yeah. Then he'll catch 3 fish back to back after we've been out there grinding for 2 hours with nothing, and then go take another nap. God bless him.
I remember him just sleeping on the front of the Patriot the whole time. Like, he didn't sleep at night, and then he just came out and just watched everyone just the whole just sleep apnea and just, oh God, it was rough.
All right, I got a pet peeve. It's and I know a lot of the boat, sometimes it's hard to find 3, 4, 5, 6 rod holders in a row to keep the rods you brought together. So sometimes it's like, I got 2 here, I got 1 here, I got 2 up top. But when you use a rod, I hate, I'm coming down the rail jig and I've got a row of 4 rods sitting there, jig on the rod holder. No one's using them. It's a discarded rod, but it's on the rail. And now I've got to navigate around it. It just drives me nuts because it's so simple to take your rod and put it in an off rail. I mean, even if I was just going to go to the bathroom and get a drink of water real quick, there's no reason for me to leave the rod unattended on the rail. That's all I ask is take the rod, put it in a rod holder that's off the rail. because I'm also inviting, if I were to leave my rod there, I got to expect someone's going to probably have to move it, get around it. Could be a dicey situation. So, if your rod gets broke and it was left in a rod holder on the rail, like, your fault,
And fighting a amberjack down the rail with a million rods in the way. Torture, dude.
And you'll do it on every trip,
Yeah. No, it's hard to get a whole group of people to be considerate of each other in every aspect of fishing etiquette, But I think like Ryan was saying, for the most part, guys, they just need to be told, once in a while. Need a little reminder.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're getting upset about that, maybe the long range trips aren't for you.
Yeah, that's
Like,
right.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Remember what we're signing up for here.
Yeah. Any pet peeves you have or etiquette that you could think of, Ryan, that needs to be told?
Maybe I'm the guy that pisses everyone off, but you guys covered most of that stuff. I'm out there having a good time.
The other thing that would be some good input, I think, that we can produce for guys that are listening at home that are considering their first long range trip, or have only done a few and haven't quite got the full gist of it. Creature comforts, right? What do you do? Like, how do you make yourself more comfortable on a trip? And I can remember, as a young man, not that I'm an old man, but I'm no spring chicken anymore either. But I remember I would stay up 3 days straight. It didn't faze me. I'd start getting loopy and hitting people in the head with weights and stuff, but you know what I mean? But I could stay up 3 days straight, but now I gotta sleep. I gotta get a little bit of sleep in there. So like for me, creature comforts starts out with my bunk, right? Making sure that I got a clean sheet on there. I got a comfortable pillow, and then I've got, generally they're freezing down there. So I either have a sweater or a pair of sweatpants that I could bring with me in case my blanket's not enough. That's like a number one creature comfort for me. But any creature comforts you guys can think of whenever you go on a trip, like, you got to have this.
Yeah.
So getting yourself clean is like a huge thing. I mean, some of the boats have showers. Some of them have showers that don't really work. But I mean, in the Marines, it was always about keeping yourself clean. So baby wipes are a big thing. Like on these boats, you're always going to be covered in sunscreen. So getting that old sunscreen off your face at the end of the day, the baby wipe is hugely important. What I do, if there is no shower available or something, I'll take a couple water bottles and just like stick them in the sun or something like that during the day, so they actually get a little warm. And you can poke a hole in the top of them, and you can just spray yourself down in your underwear, and you just get like a quick little shower. And honestly, the morale goes from 0 to 100 so fast when you get yourself clean. It's I mean, sometimes I'll just wash myself if I'm on a overnighter on like a center console. A lot of them have freshwater wash downs, and I'll just rinse myself off with the freshwater wash down. It's crazy how much better you feel after just a full day on the boat. Just get yourself clean, change your clothes, change your socks. I'm a new man now. I am 100% a new man. And you don't want to do it. It's like, even now, I don't know if you guys get like this in your house, but you're like, ugh, I had to shower. It just feels so laborious at the end of the day. And then you do it. You're like, oh, wow, this is the best thing I've ever done all day. Like, I live here now. This is amazing. So it's the same thing. It's like kind of like taking care of yourself, like forcing yourself to do the thing. And then suddenly you feel so much better after.
Oh, I could totally relate to that.
Mine would be the eye mask, earplugs, and mini battery that I can plug the fan into, because I'm a fan guy.
You went with all three.
I need air circulating. So I
Airflow.
like to plug that little fan in and
Yeah. Well, after a long range trip where the AC cuts out on a boat,
Oh,
That's genius.
a portable fan, whether even if I don't use it, because some of these boats are kept cold and I might not pull the fan, I always bring a battery powered fan on every trip I ever go to, because it has saved my life before.
do you remember, Will, the AC cut out on the Yankee ones, and when you go downstairs into the berth, it's red lights, right? The AC's out, it's hot, and you hear things banging and clanking, and I'm filming Will, and Will's like, dude, it's like an aquatic torture chamber down here.
He was in the bow. He was in the bow compartment.
Oh, that's like the hottest part too, isn't it? Like all the way up there is the hot part.
Oh yeah. Well, he was in the bow, and he was sleeping amongst like Anchor Road and stuff. And we were going through like 6 to 8s too. It
He
was
just
like
goes full feral when he gets on these boats.
I was like,
what's he like at home?
I felt like we were in war. I'm like, take my hand, I'll get you out of there.
He's like, no, you just go, man. Save yourself.
Leave me.
Oh man, I've got one more thing that I actually like just picked up on the recent trip was dude, my wife bought me this Yeti drinking bottle, and dude, just having that outside of the air conditioned area so you don't have to like get that zap of cold air, and being able to hit your water all day long, and that way you're staying hydrated, especially when it's super hot. So like staying hydrated is huge, especially in the summer.
And how about picking up the Sea Sucker Fisherman Center or the dual cup holders that you can just suction cups?
Oh, that's genius.
Really nice to have.
40 chess over here.
Most boats have a spot to put that Sea Sucker on there, and I just experienced that myself. But it's got like all these little holes for hooking your lures onto. So for the jigging guy, dude, but instead of like just throwing these rigged jigs back in my bag and trying to sort it out later, like I'm hooking them on there, and by the time we get to the end of the trip, I've got like 5 of them neatly stacked on there that I can pick through as I continue fishing. But that thing was awesome. Yeah, that's definitely a good one. So staying comfortable at sea, and then the next thing really is and we'll dig into this after the break, is the weather conditions leading up to a trip. So long range trips generally we're traveling long distances to get there. A lot of us, whether you're going to Texas like Ryan did, or we're going out to California, about as far away from home as you can possibly get, and then watching the weather and cancellations and things like that. So let's dig into that when we get back. But once again, I'd like to thank our sponsor of the show, Accurate. Thank you for sponsoring this episode of Tapping Bottom with Johnny Jigs.
Fish hard.
And we can't wait to see the new Valiant. Ooh, I can't wait to see it. So weather, guys. Weather. And this is one of those, like,
Whether or not
you go fishing, right? So I think every boat has their own, whether they call the trip or not. But I mean, I can remember spending, days looking at weather apps and whatever the case may be, and wondering, like, is the trip going to go or not? And what's the cutoff for each coast? And really, I don't have the answer to that. Anybody got the answer to that?
It's different per boat too. It's what's the boat's tolerance? Are you on a private trip too? Like it's easier for you to make that call at that point too. If it's all under you, if it's a Johnny Jigs trip and it's 10 to 11 the whole time, and the captain's like, we can go, and everyone else is going to be miserable. So there's different tolerances. Everyone, you just have to understand what the group's vibe is and what the boat's vibe is.
Right. 10 to 11 foot seas. The misery.
I can tell you a pet peeve of every headboat captain, or probably every charter boat captain, period. And that's seeing a little bit of weather 2 weeks out and calling the captain, hey, we going or not? Even like 3 days out, they're like,
Yeah.
We have to figure too how many people are flying.
Right.
They have to their flights, car rental, hotel. Everything to get to this. This could be their once a year, once every so many year trip. So they have a lot invested in this.
Yeah. I mean, I would say if you're flying to this location, book your flight just the day before.
Or get flight insurance. That's an option too. You can always, with many airlines, you can just change your flight if you pay for the insurance.
That's probably the best move.
Because the day before, it's going to be the most expensive it can possibly be.
$14,000.
No, I'm not saying book the flight the day before, but make the flight for the day before.
Right.
Yeah, so you're not getting there, 2 days early, and then all of a sudden
Extra day off work, though. You might not be able to do that.
Another night hotel.
And if your flight gets canceled, the day prior, you're not making it on the boat. The boat's not waiting for you.
Yeah.
It's a lot to think about.
Gets dicey.
Yeah, I like to schedule my flight a month before so I have time to prepare, get all my gear together.
Right.
30 days minimum.
I kind of want to be like under 5 foot seas. Like I'm looking at it, and like under 5 foot seas, I think is doable. 15 15 knot winds is still tough, and it's like I think 15 knot winds is like right at the edge of like what I want to be on a big boat. On my personal boat, absolutely not. I'm not going out on that. Forget it. If I have the option.
Well,
But
in your guys' experience, how, like, because you've had so many cancellations now at this point for the Yankee, for the AP, how much time do they normally give you for these trips? When are they normally telling you? I know we're getting the phone calls constantly about them, like we have any idea.
Yeah, if it's significant weather, you might get a day in advance or two. If it's like a hurricane is there and it's clearly coming through, you'll be a day ahead. But many of them have been the same day.
yeah, if it's like teetering on the edge of yay or nay, and it's not like a definitive, we're definitely not going, then yeah, I think it's like the day before, and that's it.
That sucks.
Yeah.
I haven't had one canceled on myself yet, but
Yeah.
that's, I mean, it's inevitable. It's not if, it's when.
Yeah, knock on wood. So, and for us, with if the boat is moving super fast, it's like all of a sudden everything gets twice as hard for bait guys and the jigging guys, because being able to when bottom fishing, right? So being able to stay in contact with the bottom is harder. You need more lead. Being able to stay in contact with the bottom with jigs as well.
You're
you
saying because there's so much wind, because it's so rough, that it's moving the boat so fast that it's making it very difficult to fish the bottom.
Yeah, I can't. But they have ways of combating that. I mean, the AP is a big steel boat, so the wind doesn't move it as much as like per se the Yankee Capt, which is an aluminum hull boat, and that boat will start flying across the water. So Captain Greg actually puts out a sea anchor, which essentially brings the boat to a screeching halt. It is incredible how well that thing works. So these captains have some tricks up their sleeves to make it doable for us.
And a sea anchor basically is a parachute underwater, for anybody that doesn't know. It's not dragging. It's not a dragging anchor. It's an anchor. It's a parachute basically they put inside the water.
Huge parachute that goes out. We actually got caught up in it. We had great weather this whole entire trip, and then all of a sudden we got caught up in a squall that came through. Just one small storm that came through, and it was insane. And Captain Greg had the sea anchor out, which is ideal really because it keeps you pointed in a certain direction for taking the weather. But that thing came through. I think it broke some of his gear on the boat.
The wind clocked 70 miles an hour.
Yeah, dude, it was the perfect storm, man.
70.
Yeah,
we have video.
Imagine being on like a contender when that happened. Like, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, dude,
That's all in one of our YouTube videos like 4 years ago, and the footage was pretty incredible.
Yeah, if you want to go to our YouTube channel, you can check that out. And I think Dev will probably put a clip on it on this video if you're watching live instead of listening on the radio. But yeah, so weather can definitely play a big role in your gear packing and planning and everything.
I will say, for those of you out there that might be a little scared of weather because you get seasick, I'm a guy that gets seasick. I've been seasick a lot in my life, and I haven't been seasick on any of my recent trips. And even this most recent one that I went out of Port Aransas, it was 6 to 8, like easily. But that was a cat hole, and it didn't rock that much, and I was good to go, man. So, I mean, get your Dramamine, get your seasickness patches, but a lot of the times those big boats handle the weather a lot better than you think. And as long as you're hydrating, eating well, and actually taking care of yourself, a lot of the time you don't get sick.
For the Dramamine, make sure you take it 24 hours before.
That's
Don't
huge.
think you can just pop the pill and hop on the boat, right?
While you're seasick.
Exactly. It has to be in your system. So I get very seasick. Every time we go out, I have to take it. I'm weaning myself down to a half pill or a quarter pill now, but I'll take a half a pill 24 hours before anytime I go out, even if it's for a day trip.
That's huge.
Yeah. I think the Transderm scope, which is the patch that goes behind your ear, I've seen that probably be the most effective out of the seasickness medicines. But I've seen guys with, like, I've gotten on a boat with a guy and he's like, you see this watch here? He's like, I won't get sick. 2 hours later, he's and I'm like, all right, dude. I'm like, you sure you don't want one of these patches? But I've been seasick before as well, and it's something to do with the fluid in your ear. But that's a good point, Ryan, because at the end of the day, like this boat is not taking you back, dude.
Nope.
Like you are, if you get seasick in the first couple hours or something, like guess what? You're stuck.
Yeah, but it goes away. So I've the overnighter that I did in San Diego, absolutely terrible seasickness. It was my first overnighter trip ever, and I'm hanging out, talking to everyone else on the boat, drinking beers, having a good time, go to sleep below the boat, and I wake up and immediately know I'm like, this is the most seasick I've ever been in my life. Like I sprint up. I'm not like a person that's just going to vomit. Like I can hold it long enough, and I sprint up, vomit over the side, and just all day I was just miserable. But I kept fishing, and like that also is a thing too. Like if you do get sick, you have to force yourself to stay up and just fish. Like I think I was like high hook on yellowfins. Like I was violently ill, vomiting and fighting a yellowfin.
Hell yeah.
But and by the end of the day, I was back. Like I could finally get some water down, finally get some food down, and it like will go. But I've seen a lot of hard men, like I'm talking Marines, Army vets, just in the fetal position, just looking terrible. And you gotta force yourself to get up and move, because your body's gonna get used to it eventually, man. It's not gonna let you die from seasickness. Like, and you're on a long range trip, like you're going to get used to it, and just has to.
Some guys just don't get it, and some guys do.
I've never been seasick.
doesn't.
Son of a
Second
gun.
in my whole life.
I
Son
think
of
you
a
did
gun.
tell me you felt woozy one time, but I got sick on a long range California trip too, and I continued fishing. But I even know, remember that guy Matt who was on the Deadliest Catch? He was a pretty popular mate on one of the Deadliest Catches, and even him who spent years and years doing that boat, he's like, one time he got seasick and he got over it and he just kept it moving, baby. And that's just part of the deal, right?
It's terrible, but it's not the end of the world. I think some guys let it beat them, and you just gotta keep going, man.
Yeah.
Puke and rally.
So I get it so bad that I'm puking and I have nothing left in my body, and my diaphragm's contracting so hard that my abs are now cramping, and I'm having to try and stretch myself out while I'm still like. So yeah,
I'm a yellowfin.
It's so like, I mean, if anyone is watching this and thinking like, well, you haven't been as sick as me, like I've been as bad as anyone out there, brother. Like can't get any water down for like 8 hours. Like it sucks, but it's my penance to get to go out and fish all the time.
Did
man.
you take Dramamine that day or no?
Sometimes I have. Typically, it definitely helps, but sometimes I've been sick with Dramamine or with the patch. Like sometimes it just
Even with the
doesn't.
patch?
Yeah,
really?
sometimes.
Wow.
Actually, no, I misspoke on that. I've only worn the patch once and I didn't get sick, but that's not a big enough sample size for me to say the patch fixes all.
Yeah, it's kind of a pain in the butt though, because you have to get a prescription to get the patch. You got to go see your doctor, and
They're not cheap.
No, but generally you can get them to like give you like 10 of them, so you've got it for quite some time. But but the only downside to it is it definitely just dehydrates you so bad. You got to keep drinking water. I don't like wearing it if for the most part, I do not get sick. Like our last trip was like 8-foot seas. I think there were some 10-footers in there, and I didn't take anything, and I was pretty good. It's just luck of the draw.
Sorry to get us off track with seasickness.
Yeah. But so preserving your fish and getting your fish home on a long range trip. So like if you're traveling a long distance, how do you get the fish back to your home, into your freezer, into the hands of your friends and family and stuff? I know I have my ways, but I'd love to hear what you guys do whenever you go on long range trips.
So, I mean, for me at this point, there's so much that goes into flying, and it's really obnoxious. As someone that like films content too, when I go, I bring all my own rods, bring all my own gear. I think honestly, if it's under 18 hours, like I might just drive it as just a single guy. I might just send it in one shot, like because I do 12 to Louisiana, no problem. And but if you have to fly, and you can't, bring all those coolers and stuff, I typically, when I fly into a place that I know I'm going to bring fish home, I'll get there with enough time to stop at a Walmart and buy a cheap enough cooler, typically like a $25 like 50 quart cooler that I can then fill with a bunch of fish fillets. I can't fit all my fish fillets. That's the unfortunate part. I can't bring all the fish I caught back, but I can fill about 40-ish pounds of fish fillets, and then I can put in 10 pounds of ice packs, not actual ice packs that don't have any liquid, that can't leak or anything. And I just tape that up with just, packing tape or something like that, and you can basically check it as a third bag or a second bag, and you just pay the $50, $100 or whatever it is to get that extra bag, and chip's fine. I've done that probably 6 or 7 times at this point. I give away a lot of coolers.
I was gonna say, where's all those coolers at?
And it's a business expense, but yeah, I just give. I put them on the side of the road. Sometimes say free. Like,
And do you tape it up after you go through?
No,
or
I
before?
just-
Because they've always made me open and go through all of my fish.
I've
every
never
time.
had to do that.
Never.
It's already pre-taped, and they're like, "What's inside it? Fish? Okay, sounds good." One guy was concerned it was live fish, and I was like, "Nope, promise you they're not." He's like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Yes, brother."
Here's a move. If you're bringing your own coolers with you, right? Like, so you drove to this place and you're not flying. And if they don't have, it's either expensive or they don't have readily available ice there. This is what I do when I get there. So I have a cooler that I fill to the top with ice. I don't bring it with me on the boat. It stays in my truck there. And then I also put dry ice in the bottom of it. So by the time I get back, that ice, because it's locked inside a marine cooler, 3 days, 4 days, all the ice is still there when I get back. So as soon as it's time to pass out the fish, like, I'm not scrambling to go find ice or buy ice or anything. I've already got the ice from my ice, dealer, which is generally the best price, and I'm iced up and ready to go. So that's a good move for sure. And then the other thing is, if you don't fillet the fish there, if you're not filleting the fish, on the spot and putting it into bags, stacking that fish inside the cooler. So it's so important. I think a lot of guys miss the bus on this. They really do. So I like to put the fish vertical. So all of everything that runs down the fish and off of the fish into the bed of ice that I've put in the bottom of the cooler. So I will stack all the fish very neatly in a position. Sometimes they could be even touching each other because the coolness kind of goes in there, and then the fish stays better preserved. You don't want the fish sitting in that slushy water at the bottom of your cooler. It ruins it.
Never thought of that. That's a good idea.
Yeah,
though.
it's it. And then the other thing is, here's another big one. If you fillet the fish there and all the fish goes into bags, the bags still, the meat will push water out, and you still have fish that's sitting soggy in the bottom of the bag in that soggy water. So you could do a couple things. Put a paper towel in it. Put a group of paper towels in it so it's absorbing that water. Or the other thing is, whenever you stack that fish into the cooler, create a pocket to where you put the bag upside down, pretty much Ziploc, but upside down to where the water sits into the bottom of the bag, so it's not touching it. So whenever you go to pull it out, you pull it out quickly, but it's not soaking in the juices that are in the bottom of the bag. So a couple good pros tips there from somebody who's been doing it for a couple decades. But any other preservation of fish?
Well, what are your guys' thoughts on spraying your fish fillets off with tap water instead of salt water?
I don't do it.
Right? I don't do it either.
Yeah, and what's the reason?
Supposedly the chemicals in our water is not good for the fish meat.
I think it might just be the salinity too. Like, I've heard you can just make your own salt water at home, but it's the fact you can't use fresh water on the saltwater fillets. It starts to degrade them. I don't really know that for a fact.
Sounds good.
I don't have scientific evidence. I've just heard a lot of people say that over the years, and I work so hard to catch these fish that
You can watch it like firm up too when you hit it with fresh water. It firms up. The color kind of starts to get a little whiter.
Yeah.
are you gonna buy a steak and rinse it off before you do, like, probably not. Like,
And did you ever hear anything about how you stack like your tuna? If you have your tuna laying on one side, that the blood and everything can go to that one side, and you're supposed to rotate your tunas in the icebox?
oh, that's next level.
I've heard that too, because the way that it solidifies. Yeah.
I feel like we can get crazy with this, right? Like, a lot of guys are doing the Ecojimi now. You can't deny that it works well, but it's like, do you want to do it every time?
Bro, that freaks me out.
It's exhausting.
Yeah. Watch them sticking this lionfish in his head. Like, I'm fine beating it to death with a hammer, but sticking that thing up there.
The more
Yeah,
humane
like
way.
you're making like a Frankenstein fish, like,
So,
dance puppet.
So for our listeners, the Ecojimi is like, it comes from Japan, and essentially you spike the fish in the brain. Like, you give it a good spike to the brain, which kills the fish immediately. And then the next thing is that you take this wire and you run it down the spinal cord of the fish, and you could watch this fish, like it starts vibrating almost, and you could see it like losing its life as it goes through the spine of the fish.
Well, the spike lost its life. Now you're breaking nerves. You're breaking circuits.
Yeah, until it's finally done. So I've done this on film with Chris, and I'm like, this is the humane way to do it. And then I spiked this fish in the head, and then I took this cord and I shove it down his spinal cord, and I'm like, this is the best way for it to happen. And I can tell you that's
ugly.
It doesn't look good.
No.
I think we hit on some pretty good points about head boats today. But I gotta ask. I've been a fan for quite some time, Ryan, of your YouTube. Is probably one of the most incredible. Like, you're very articulate in your YouTube, and you have a great way of explaining what's going on, where you're at, what you're doing, how you're catching fish. And then there's also this level of honesty that you bring to it, to where it's like, okay, I screwed up here, or look at what we did, and this is how we did it, and I think that's why you've gained such a following and success really in the YouTube. So what I'm getting at is what can, as a fan, what can I expect coming up in this year? Any new trips, or what's planned in Ryan Morie's world?
Well, first of all, thank you.
No, you
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So in this world, I always try and, make a bunch of plans, and sometimes it just doesn't go that way. You know what it feels like sometimes is it feels like there's just always another random opportunity will just pop up, and at fishing, everything is so last minute. It's like, hey man, fishing's really good. Can you come tomorrow? And I'm like, maybe, I don't know. Let me check. But as for right now, with spring coming up, I'm super stoked. I'm super excited because there's always so much to fish for. I don't think all of these trips will happen, but here's what I'm trying to do. Sometime in March, I want to make it up to OBX for their cobia run, because it absolutely goes bonkers. Those fish are so silly when they're up there, when they're just pouring through OBX. It's only like 2 or 3 weeks. They're making their way up to the Chesapeake so they can go breed, but they'll just eat a little bit of anything, and they're in these giant pods. So the sight fishing is just incredible. So I want to try and do that. In April and May, I'm going to try and do as much local fishing as I can. I'll be running my own boat, trying to, sight fish on the beaches for jacks, blues, cobia, whatever. Trying to live bait fish for kings and dolphin and blackfins locally, do some SPJ stuff, a little bit of everything locally. And then May, if you guys don't know this, it seems like everywhere in North America, in Central America, and South America, May is the best month. That's when every operation's like, you need to come. It's you're only one person, so you can only be in one place at a time. But right now I have a trip to Cabo, scheduled to do some kind of popping and jigging, roosters, cuberas, a lot of the same stuff that you'll see other places in Central America. There's yellowfins and stuff there. And then have a nice slow pitch trip out of Tampa that hopefully we can bring Johnny on. Coming up in the middle of May. Maybe I can try and get my first Kitty Mitchell, try and catch up with you,
Yes,
because
sir.
apparently that guy has some Kitty Mitchell numbers, so that'd be pretty sick, especially to do it on a jig. And then the summertime, man, like what I like to do, what gets me fired up is fishing for anything, because it's just good. But
Yeah,
I'm
man.
going to be sitting there thinking about tuna fishing. I'm going to want to get to New Jersey, do some bluefin and some yellowfin jigging. Fall comes around and I'm sitting here thinking about bluefins and yellowfins again. I'm thinking about the biggest, meanest fish, trying to catch them on spin, whether it's poppers, a no live bait needed, catch them on a jig. But for me, it's what gets me so juiced up is seeing fish blowing up, or seeing fish and it's just sight fishing them, seeing that activity and then casting and presenting a lure, and that constant pursuit of, why didn't I get a bite here? But they were absolutely chewing. And then the next time that you pull up, you did get a bite. And what was that little micro decision that I changed, or that micro cast, or how was it that one scenario was different from the other? And those puzzles that you're always trying to, feed, or those puzzles that you're trying to work through in your head all the time, it just gets me fired up. It gets me juiced up. This last trip to the Gulf Coast, when I just fished in Louisiana and I fished in Alabama, basically three trips in 4 days. And it was all yellowfins, on spinners and stuff like that. And it's the last day I caught two nice yellowfins, like a 100-pounder and like a 165. And the craziest stuff that I saw was well after I caught a fish. It was just, the literal 200 to 250 pound fish airing out like 10 feet off the bow. And we're not getting bites. But that's like what's more seared in my memory than actually catching the fish.
Right.
It's just, it's that crazy pursuit that I'm just so addicted to. And it's cool. When you fish for a long time, sometimes you get a little apathetic to different parts of fishing. But when you go on those types of trips that just reignite you, just get you juiced up again, man, I just want to get back out there and go fishing, but I need to get on my computer and edit some videos. So that's the side of content creation no one sees, is sitting at the dang computer.
That's the thing I was thinking while you're saying, I'm like, man, this just sounds like a wonderful adventure. Like, what a life this guy lives. We feel really sorry for you, Ryan, that you that you have to go on all these fishing trips. But I think there is another side to it. It's not just all fun and games. Like you have to put together these travel arrangements, right? There's work into prepping the gear and getting the work going, but then also sitting at the editing, board and trying to make these, great videos to put out for people, I think is also some work. But
it definitely is. I mean, so if you're a content creator at any, in any niche, not just fishing, and you're actually, making your living off of it, you're a one-person media business. At its core, you're essentially making videos and selling advertising. And whatever that is, whether that's direct YouTube ad revenue, where you get a check from uploading YouTube videos that are monetized every week and you don't actually talk to anyone, or that's selling sponsorships or things like that. You're essentially, you're a one-person media company that does everything from the shooting, the editing, the planning, the prep, the, networking, the selling, the, negotiating of contracts and partners. And so there's a lot that goes into it as a one-man show.
Yeah.
And I actually think I'm a better employee than I am like a decision maker. Like I was always like an A-rated employee. I think I'm like a B-rated, like, CEO if I could.
I think it's all part of, you get better at running a business just as you do at fishing. And when you have that analytical mind like you do, when you're picking apart, why didn't this tuna bite now? Why did it bite then? The same thing falls into your life and business and every aspect of your life. But Ryan, it was super cool to have you here today with us. Where can everybody find you if they don't already know?
It's pretty much Ryan Morie on everything. I think on Facebook it's Ryan Morie Outdoors. But if you just search my name, last name's Morie, you can find me.
Yeah, do yourself a favor and check this guy out, because he's got some of the most incredible fishing related content on the internet. I'd say you're top tier for me, man.
Thank you.
Guys, thanks for tuning in to Tapping Bottom with Johnny Jigs. And thank you once again for Accurate for sponsoring our show today. And until we meet again, keep tapping that bottom.
Jig on.